So first things first, oops, I have it running already. Uh, we would need to install Angular Translate, so we would just use bower install Angular Translate.
Okay, so we're assuming this is already on an existing app, and then we're going to use bower install to add.
Yeah, so for this I used Yeoman Generator to scaffold out this app. I did npm install already, bower install, and now I'm okay, ready. I want to internationalize this and get set up. So the first thing is to install Angular Translate.
Cool.
So I've done that already, but...
All right, and it sees it's in cache, already has it, so it's good to go.
Right. So, and then thankfully due to the built-in gulp tasks, I already have, it'll inject, because the next step to do that can be something that catches you if you don't remember to, is to add that script to your index HTML.
Well, that's a good point, because the hot towel template does it for you. Right. But in this one here, somewhere in that list is Angular Translate now.
Yeah.
What is that, like line 56 or something?
Right here.
I can't count.
59.
60, 59.
59. So Gulp is doing that for me when I run Gulp serve dev and all that.
But by default, normally you wouldn't get that. You'd have to add it yourself.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
So that's something that you could get caught up in.
And it matters. I assume you just have to put that after Angular somewhere.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So now we have Angular Translate. Is that it? We done?
No.
Play-by-play over.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next step we would need to do is configure the Angular Translate. So for that, during the config phase with Angular, we'll go up to core in this application, and go into config, and in here we're going to want to inject the translation provider.
Okay, so configuration phase in Angular is the place where you kind of, after Angular started, but before the app is ready. So we need to put this here, I'm assuming, because we want to make sure the translation is ready before the app is actually presented on the screen.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And in this point, we're going to tell it some different things on how it should behave, what language, default language to run with, and start up with, and things like that. So to do that, we will add that in here as a dependency. And I'm probably going to blank on this now.
The name of the provider?
Yeah.
Translation provider? I can Google that kind of stuff quick, too.
Switch.
So we've got one of those. And you're actually putting this in, what file is that in, actually, in Hot Towel?
The core config file.
Okay, because core config in Hot Towel is just like put all your setup kind of stuff there.
Correct. Yeah.
Cool. So that's you're looking for the translate provider?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. I think you wrote translation there. You want translate?
Good catch.
Cool. This is why they have Google, by the way. You know, I did a class the other day.
Back in my day, though.
And I was asking people, hey, does anybody here use Google? Nobody raised their hand. And I said, well, since nobody uses Google, just Bing this for me. Bing Google. Yeah.
Nice. All right, so I've injected that now. So
once we have a translate provider, I assume, I'm just going to guess here, I'm assuming that the translate provider is going to be where you're going to have to tell it, where do I get those translations? It's not going to figure it out on its own, right?
Yes.
It doesn't know that hello is hola in Spanish. So,
So one thing we can do first is we can set up the translation tables that are going to be used in there. Right?
Okay.
So I'm going to create just a JSON object called English. So we're going to take the translation files, and I already have some predefined ones that we can grab. Actually, not those, but right here.
So you'd have to have something like this in your site, right, where you have like EN, JSON, or ES. And those EN, ES, those are like standardized conventions for the languages, right?
Oops, that's not where I want to go. Yes, that's correct. So I'd say English is here. Plug in all those translations.
Wow, you type fast.
I know, thanks. So the way this is actually formatted is the key is the translation ID, right? And that's what we're going to end up using later on in our And then the value is the actual value of that particular text in the language that it's supposed to be for. So here we're just going with English.
Angular Translate will look up the key like title, and it'll say what language or what's the translation of that, internationalization. But if you actually looked up Spanish, we'd have the same kind of thing, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll add that a language like Spanish later on in there.
Okay.
So then next, this is where we'll start using the translate provider, and we want to tell it that we have these translations to have. So we'll say, I think it's translation or translations, I forget. Translations, and you give it a key, and that key is going to be the language table, right? So this, for all this JSON object, it's going to go into what they call the language table, and you have to provide a key so that it knows when you're using English, go to the English table. When you're using Spanish, go to the Spanish table. And then pass in the English JSON.
Cool. So you're just simply mapping, okay, this is English.
Yep.
All right.
So now we just taught Angular Translate in this Angular app English.
Cool. So all we've done here so far is we injected in the provider for translate in the configure phase, which already is going to run because that's already hooked up. And we've told it, here's your translations for English, which we could read it off of a file.
Yep.
And now we're saying, okay, all that stuff I just gave you, that was English. Because just by calling it the variable English isn't going to help, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not that smart.
It's not
or
reading like
intelligent.
that.
Yeah. All right, so let's actually get it running so that we can just make sure everything's looking good still.
Okay. In GSD, I assume you've got like an aliased gulp served out
Yes,
for this?
sorry
Gotcha.
about that.
No worries.
So it looks like we do have an issue.
So we have an error. Cool. Our first error. Console. Failed to
Unknown
instantiate.
provider.
Ah, so we had a translate provider. Does it not know how to find that? Did we make it a dependency of the Angular app?
Ah, good point. That's a big step.
So when we added an Angular Translate, we bower installed, we added the index HTML, but we probably didn't tell Angular, hey.
Right. So we need to go into our core module and tell it that we have Pascal prect.translate.
CHD, right? Yep. And you'd have to know what that module name is. Like you'd have to
Right.
like go Google Angular Translate to figure out what the heck is the name of that thing.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm gonna go check that out.
So let's make sure while you're doing that, and I came back to the app and we're up and running now.
Sweet. So that was all it was.
Yep.
It's good because sometimes you get these errors and it's like, hey, what's actually going on? And I noticed that error. I get that a lot. I will always bower install or npm install, and then I'll go put it in the index HTML because my tool does it.
Right.
And then 20 minutes later, after done coding, I'll run it. I'm like, what did I do?
What happened?
Yeah.
So now that we know that's running, we can start tying in the actual translation IDs to this view that we're seeing here for the dashboard.
Okay. We've told it English is our default for now, so we're okay.
Actually, I want to take a step back. We need to tell Angular Translate what's the preferred language that we want to use. When
Okay,
it
so
loads
just
up.
having one language isn't good enough? We have to tell it the preferred one?
Yeah, it won't automatically just know use English.
Okay. And obviously, we're not going to have one language anyway.
Right.
We're going to try to do
So
something.
I believe it's preferred language, right?
Yep, preferred language.
And then you give it the key, which is EN, and then we should be good there.
And that has to match the key right above you, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So that'll tell it load English first when we start up. So we come in here, everything's still running good. Sweet. All right.